We're going to carry on with learning about methods. Okay, so Java methods. In the introduction, it says, in the last lesson we created an instance of the store class. In the main method, we learned that objects have state and behavior. So the behavior was given by the methods, and the state was given by the fields or instance variables. We have seen how to give objects state through instance fields, so exactly what I said before. Now we're going to learn about behavior, so about methods. Remember our example of a savings account. A saving account should know the balance of money available. Fair enough. It should be able to perform depositing, so in case you want to deposit some money. And by depositing, we would increase the amount available. If we make a deposit, of course, the amount available is going to increase. Now, the same savings account should be able to perform withdrawing, which means the amount available will decrease. So if you take out some money, if you withdraw, then the amount available is going to be less. And it should also be able to check the balance. So in a savings account, we should be able to check the balance, and this means seeing or finding out or knowing or displaying the amount available. Okay, you have now defined and called constructor methods, which create an instance of a class. You have also defined main methods, which are the tasks that execute when the program is run. So the main method, like I mentioned before in the previous lesson, the main method is the starting point of a Java program, of a Java application. Now, these are specific examples of methods. We can also define our own that will take input, do something with it, and return the kind of output we want. Okay, so we have a little bit of an animation here, which shows kind of the steps involved into making a sandwich. You have the bread, the cheese, an egg, some avocado, I guess that is, and then the other slice of bread, and there you go. This would make a sandwich. Okay, so if this was a method called make sandwich, then these would be the steps that method will perform, will execute. Okay, now what if it took 20 lines of code to make a sandwich? Our program would become very long very quickly if we were to make multiple sandwiches. So having said this, with this in mind, we have to understand that methods are powerful because they allow us to create blocks of code that are repeatable and modular. So essentially, instead of writing these 20 lines of codes every time we want to create to make a sandwich, why don't we take those 20 lines of codes, we put them in a method, okay, and we're going to call this method make sandwich, and with these parentheses, and then whenever we want to actually make a sandwich, instead of writing those 20 lines of code, we just call or invoke this method. Okay, so this method, or the name of the method where we placed our code in. Okay, now if we have a look at the instructions, it goes like this. We have made a savings account class without using any methods beyond main and the constructor savings account. Okay, so we have the savings account file that has the extension .java, and then we have the savings account class here, and then it says we have the main method, which we have it here. And also we can recognize on line 5 the constructor. Okay, and this constructor, we see that it takes a parameter of type int, and this parameter is called initial balance, And what this constructor does is it takes whatever value we pass it to the constructor and assigns it to the instance variable called balance. Okay, it says run the code to see some account behavior happen. Okay, we're going to run the code, and it's just executing line by line all the code that is inside our main method. Okay, so it goes inside the main method. It says here on line 10 is creating a new object. On line 13 it prints hello, and so on and so forth. So we can see here, we can see the output of the code written in here already. Okay, let's move on to the next lesson. This is about defining methods. So remember our car example from the last lesson. Let's add a method to this car called start engine that will print this text here. Okay, so starting the car and vroom. The method looks like this. So we have public, which we have seen before, and this one says this method is going to be available, is going to be visible to other parts of the program. Okay, void, and I don't think we've seen this keyword so far, but we're going to learn about this this keyword in this chapter. And now we have the name of the method, start engine. We have the parentheses and then the curly braces here, and whatever is inside this method is going to get executed every single time when we invoke this method or when we call this method. Invoking and calling the method mean the same thing. In the first line, public void start engine, so on this line, is the method signature. So the first line here is called the method signature. It gives the program some information about the method. Public means that other classes can access this method, so public is a visibility modifier or an access modifier. The void keyword means that there is no specific output from the method. We will see methods that are not void later in this lesson, but for now all of our methods will be void. Okay, so it means that this method does not return a value. It just prints something on the screen, but it does not return a value. Okay, and then start engine is the name of the method. So to say it once more, this line here, public void followed by the name of the method, represents the method signature. A check balance method for the savings account we talked about earlier looks something like this. Okay, so we have public void check balance, the name of the method, and then it has some code inside. This code is going to get executed every single time this method gets called or gets invoked. The two print statements are inside the body of the method, so whatever is inside of a method is called the body of that method. Okay, and is defined by the curly braces, so we know this is the end of the method, this is the start, and whatever is inside is called the body of the method. Anything we can do in our main method, we can do in other methods. All of the Java tools, you know, like math and comparison operators, can be used to make interesting and useful methods. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it goes like this. In between the constructor and the main method, add a method called advertise to the store class. So I'm going to copy this name, and it says in between the constructor and the main method. So the constructor is here and the main method is here. We're going to add the advertise method, which is here also. We can see the comments. Okay, so this is the advertise method, but we have to add it public void advertise. We're gonna add the curly braces as well. Okay, and it says in between this, add a method called advertise to the store class. It should be accessible by other classes, therefore we put it as public, and it should have no output. Because it doesn't have any output, or it does not return anything, we're gonna make it void. Okay, we're gonna run this. Instruction 1 is done. If we have a look at the second one, it says inside the advertise method, type to print statements. They should result in the printouts, and this is the text. Okay, so from the previous lessons, we've already learned that to print something on the screen, we need to use the statement system.out.println. Println. We're going to end it with a semicolon. And I'm going to copy this once more because it looks like we have two lines of text that we need to print. That is the first one, and this is the other one. Notice that I've ended here this statement with a semicolon as required. Where product type is replaced with the value in the variable product type. Okay, so selling product type. Here, okay, we need to actually make it in such a way that instead of actually printing the word or the phrase product type, it needs to somehow extract the value that this variable has. We've done this before in the previous lessons, and we've done that by using concatenation. Okay, so we need to use a plus sign, knowing that this is a variable. Okay, so is this variable here. We need to make this like this, so a string. Okay, so we have the text selling, we have a space plus the product type, but we also need to enclose these two into double quotes in order to transform them into a string, into text. Okay, so now instead of actually typing on the screen product type, it will be the name. So the product type from here, it will actually take the value that we have assigned to product type here, the instance variable. Okay, however, if we have a look at the instructions here, continuing, it says, however, we're not going to see these strings printed out yet. We'll see it in the next exercise, how we can make these printouts actually run. Okay, I'm gonna run it, and this one is done as well, and we have not run anything in the main method, therefore it just stays there. It doesn't do anything. We don't have any output, we don't have anything on the screen, simply because in the main method there's no code, therefore we won't be seeing anything on the screen. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next lesson. We're gonna talk about calling methods. Calling means invoking a method. Okay, now when we add the start engine method to the car class, it becomes available to use on any car object. We can do this by calling the method on the car object we created, for example. Here is an example of calling a method on an object using the car class. Okay, so we have the car class, we have an instance variable called color. Now this instance variable is gonna be assigned, is gonna be given a value from the constructor. So here we have the constructor defined, and it takes a parameter of type string called car color, and this value, whatever we're going to pass it here, is going to be assigned to our instance variable color. Okay. Next, we have the public void start engine method. So the start engine method that has some lines of code that will print something on the screen. So system.out.println, both of them. And then if we look in the main method, this is the actual code that runs whenever we're going to run the program. It says like this. So create a variable that's going to be of type car, so of type of our class. And here, so this is the code that produces a new object of this class, and that object is going to have its reference stored in the my fast car. Okay, now we can access this method by using the name of the variable that holds our object, or the reference to our object, by using the dot notation, which we've seen before. So for example, if we wanted to access the color of our car, we would say my fast car dot color. Okay, and if we were to print that on the screen, so use system.out.println, and then in the parentheses we would say my fast car dot color, we would be getting red. Okay, the output would be red. Now if we were to have a look again at this line, so it says my fast car dot start engine. Okay, it will go to the method called start engine, and it will look inside. Okay, we have invoked, or we have called this method on this object. What does this method do? Well, it's going to print out on the screen these two lines of code. Okay, in the example above, we call the start engine method on the my fast car object. So my fast car is the object, or an instance of the my car class. Yeah, and this method call occurs inside the main method. Yeah, running the program, result in printing, starting the car, vroom. Because, well, why? Well, because my start engine, it contains these two lines of code which produce this outcome, this output. Okay, if we have a look at the instruction, it says last exercise we defined a new method, advertise, but we didn't actually see it run. We now have a store class with advertise defined, so with the advertise method defined. Call the advertise method on the lemonade stand object in the main method and see what the output is. So we have our class called store. We have an instance variable here. We have the constructor that takes a parameter of type string, and whatever value is going to be given here, we see that on line 7, our instance field or instance variable is going to be given this value. So whatever we pass it here, whenever we create a new object, is going to be assigned to the instance field. Now we have a method that we declared, we created, and it's called advertise. Okay, it's not going to return anything because it has the void keyword, and it says print. So we see on line 12 and on line 13 it says that system.out.print, and then print selling the product type. Yeah, and then on line 13 it says come spend some money. Now our instruction tells us to go in the main method and in here to run this method. Okay, so the advertise method. On what do we run it? Well, of course we run it on the object that we just created, on this instance of the class store. Okay, so we say lemonade. Oops, I think I'm gonna just copy this rather than typing it. lemonade stand dot, what are the methods available to this object? Well, this one. Okay, so call the advertise method on the lemonade stand, stand object in the main method, and see what the output is. So we've placed it, of course, in the main method because all the code that exists in the main method is going to be run, okay? And of course, it prints this because it looks in the advertise method and it prints exactly this line is the result of the code on line 12, and this code, this text is the result of the code that exists on line 13. Okay. If we have a look at the next instruction, it says now call the advertise method on the lemonade stand object 2 more times. It should be called in the main method 3 times in total. So we're gonna copy this and paste it twice more. Okay. There you go. It's exactly the same. So this is the output of our code on line 19. Then the next one is the output from the code that is on line 20. And then this one is the output that is the result of code of line 21. Okay, we're going to move on to the next lesson. We're talking about scope. A method is a task that an object of a class performs. So a method is a task that an object of a class performs. We mark the domain of this task using curly braces, okay? Everything inside the curly braces is part of the task. This domain is called the scope of a method. We can't access variables that are declared inside a method in code that is outside the scope of that method. Okay, so we can't access variables that are declared inside a method in code that is outside the scope of that method. If we have a look at the car class again, so we have a class whose name is car, and this class has some instance variables. One is called color and is of type string, and the other one is called miles driven and is of type int. This one is the constructor, and it takes a parameter of type string, which is called car color, and it says whatever value you pass it here whenever you're going to try and create an object, assign it as the color, okay? And then whenever you're creating an object, yeah, create that object with the miles as 0, because of course, if you think about it, it does make sense. You want to, if you're creating a car, okay, of course, virtually in our program, you don't want the car to have already 10 miles driven. It doesn't make sense. It should be 0, okay? So whenever you're creating a car, it starts with 0 miles driven, okay? And hence we have put here miles driven equals 0, okay? Now we have another method that doesn't return anything, and the name of the method is drive. It doesn't take any parameters. And inside this method, so the body of this method says, I want a variable called message of type string, and this variable is going to hold this text, miles driven, and then they make use of the concatenation. So you are combining, you're joining some strings with a variable, with a value that is stored in that variable, okay? And then on the next line of code, you say system.out.println message. So this line is going to print the contents of this message, which is this one. So miles driven is going to be whatever miles driven is. At the moment is 0, okay? In the main method, which is exactly the code that runs whenever we start our program or whenever we run it, says like this. We have a variable, my fast car, of type car, that stores a new object of type car, of course, yeah? And we know that at this point, myFastCar.drive, when we call it, is going to produce miles driven plus this one is going to make miles driven 0, okay? So if we were to run this code, it would print out miles driven 0, okay? The variable message, which is declared initialized inside of drive, so inside of the drive method, cannot be used inside of main. So I'm going to read this again. The variable message, so this variable, it cannot be used inside of main because it's outside the scope, okay? If we were, this variable only lives in this method here, in the drive method, okay? If we try and look outside, so to say, okay, print, if we were to say here on the next line, to say system.out.println message, it will not know what to look for because this variable here is only visible within here, within these lines of code, within this scope, okay, the scope of this drive method. However, miles driven, which is declared up here, okay, and this is going to be visible within these square brackets, okay, well, curly brackets, here and here, okay. So of course, whenever in this code we're trying to reference or to, I don't know, say to print this variable, yeah, because at the end of the day, this is a variable. Of course, it will work because it's not contained within a small little method like this one is here, okay, like this variable, for example, is. So, however, miles driven, which is declared at the top of the class, can be used inside all methods in the class, since it is in the scope of the whole class. Yeah, whatever I was telling before, because it's declared within the class rather than within a method, okay, it can be accessed anywhere. If we have a look at the instructions, it says inside the advertise method, change the product type variable to the cookie variable, which is declared in the main method. This should also result in the printout selling cookies, okay? So inside the advertise method, change the product type variable to the cookie variable, which is declared in the main method. This should also result in the printout selling cookies. Okay, so let's see, how do we do this one? Inside the advertise, okay, change the product type variable. So change this one to the cookie variable, okay, which is declared in the main method. This should also result in the printout selling cookies. Okay, so public void advertise string message selling cookies. Okay, So if we're gonna run this, it says it cannot find symbol. Okay. This instruction number 1 is done, okay? But also it says, if we have a look at the second instruction, it says, no, we got an error, so this was planned for. The cookie variable cannot be accessed inside of the advertise method. The scope is wrong. Change it back to product type. Yeah, so let's change it back to product type here. Of course, because cookie was declared here in the main method. And whenever we're trying to call cookie inside the advertise method, it doesn't see it because it's declared within this scope, okay? And we're trying to access it within this scope, okay? I'm gonna run this now. We've changed it back to product type. And then it says inside of the main method, print the string message, which is declared in the advertise method. This should print selling cookies. So inside the main method, print the string message. So inside the main method, print the string message, which is declared in the advertise method, and this should print selling cookies. Let's do this. Okay, there's a problem here. Foiled again. The message variable only exists inside the scope of the advertise method. So of course the message, because it was declared inside the advertise method, it won't be recognized inside this method because the message only exists and only exists within this scope, okay? So from here to here, this is the only space where the message, this variable, is known, okay? If we're trying to access it anywhere else, it's gonna be like, we don't know of this variable. It doesn't exist, okay? That is scope, is the limits of a variable existing somewhere, okay? Okay, so it says now, the message, so fold again, the message variable only exists inside the scope of the advertise method. Delete the faulty print statement from the main method. So we gotta delete this now. Run this again. And there you go, we have completed this step as well. And we're gonna move on to the next lesson in this one. Okay, and in this lesson we're gonna talk about parameters, more specifically adding parameters. So we saw how method scope prevents us from using variables declared in one method from one method in another method, I guess they meant to say. What if we had some information in one method that we needed to pass into another method? So similar to how we added parameters to constructors, we can customize all other methods to accept parameters. So we have a class called car, we have an instance variable called color, we have the constructor here, takes a parameter of type string called car color, and this value, whatever value we're going to give it here, is going to be assigned to our instance variable called color. Then we have a method of type void, and the name of the method is start radio, and it takes a parameter of type string, and the name of the parameter is station, and this is going to print out system.out.print. So with the use of this method of this is going to print out turning on the radio to whatever station we're giving it here. And system.out.println enjoy, okay? So whenever we're going to call this method, it's going to produce this output, okay? So turning the radio on such and such station, and then on the next line is going to say enjoy. Now we have the main method, and here on this line we're creating a new object of this class, okay? and then the reference to that object gets stored into this variable, and this variable of course is going to be of type car. And then on the object that we've just created, or rather on the variable that holds the reference to our new object, we can call, using the dot notation, we can call this method the start radio. Okay. In this code, we create a start radio method that accepts a string parameter called station. In the main method, we call the start radio method on the myCar object and provide a string argument of meditation station. A call to the start radio method on the myCar results in printing, turning on the radio to the name of whatever we gave it here, which is meditation station, and then enjoy, which is this one. Yeah. If we have a look at the instructions, they go like this. Add a method to the store class called greetCustomer. So to the store class, we have to add another method that is called greetCustomer. It should be accessible by other classes and return no output. Okay. So we're gonna create a new method. So it's gonna be public void. Okay, like so. Public because it can be accessed by other classes, and void because it should not return any output. Okay, we're gonna run this. So we finished instruction number 1. If we look at the instruction number 2, it says modify the greetCustomer method so that it accepts a string parameter called customer. Okay, so if we want this method to take a parameter of type string called customer, we do it like so. So in the parentheses we put string, so the type of the variable that this method is gonna take. This whole thing is a parameter. Okay, we've done this as well. Now it says instruction number 3, inside of the greetCustomer method, add a print statement to print this one. Okay, so I'm gonna copy that. We're gonna use the system.out.print. Okay, and we're gonna add this text to it. Okay, and you can see here, this part here is gonna be replaced by whatever customer we put in here. All right, now if we're gonna run this, instruction number 4 says inside the main method, call the greetCustomer method on the lemonade stand object. Okay, so we have lemonade stand. Okay, we use the dot notation and we use this variable, okay, this method. Okay, pass it a string argument of your choice. We have to pass it a string argument, okay, because this greetCustomer, okay, is defined as taking a parameter of type string. So we can't just call it empty like this. We have to give it a string in there. I'm gonna say Alex. Okay, I'm gonna use my own name. If we're gonna run it, it says welcome to the store, Alex. And why does it say this? Well, because let's have a look in the greetCustomer method. Let's have a look at its definition. Whenever we call the greetCustomer method and we pass it the right parameter, the right argument there, whenever we call this one, it's going to print on the screen, welcome to the store, so and so being the name of the customer that we passed it here. Okay, and this is our lesson, so 5 out of 9. Let's move on to the next one. And this one is going to be reassigning instance fields. Okay, if you remember instance fields, these are just variables, essentially instance variables. Okay, earlier we thought about a savings account as a type of object we could represent in Java. Two of the methods we need are depositing and withdrawing. Okay, so we have a I guess they're missing here the what are they missing? The class keyword. So public class savings account, and this one would have an instance variable of type double, and the name of the variable is balance. It will have public savings account. This will be the constructor, and this constructor takes a parameter of type double called starting balance, and that starting balance is going to be assigned, or the value of that is going to be given to the balance. Okay, so balance is going to take the value of whatever we pass it here whenever we create an object of type savings account of this class. And then we have a method called deposit, which is public and void, so it doesn't return any output. And this method, if you think about it, it does make sense. If you want to make a deposit, you have to give it some sort of an amount. How much do I want to deposit? Okay. And then we have the withdraw, and of course this withdraw method is gonna need an amount that we want to withdraw from it as well. Of course, the code here is code that will have to be implemented or will have to be completed here. Okay. And it goes like this. These methods would change the value of the variable balance. Okay. We can reassign balance to a new value by using our assignment operator equals. So we've seen this one before. Okay. If we say an integer or a variable of type int, an integer, with having the name my age, and we say equals to 18 if the age would be 18. Okay. Now, public void deposit, so if we have a look at this, which is exactly what I said here, we saw it how it was declared. We saw its signature. Okay, but it didn't have any body, it didn't have any implementation, it didn't have any code inside. Okay, but now we're seeing here what I meant by that. So we have public void deposit. This deposit, of course, it needs some sort of an amount that's going to be deposited to our existing balance, and it says double updated balance equals to balance, so whatever we had initially, plus amount to deposit, which is this one. Okay, and then it says balance, which is our initial balance from here, equals to updated balance. Okay, or we could have done automatically balance, which is this one, yeah, equals to balance plus amount to deposit. But this is done a bit more kind of step by step, rather than just jumping straight to saying balance equals to balance plus amount to deposit. Now, when we call deposit, it should change the value of the instance field balance. So if we were to go in the main method, we would create an object of type of the savings account, okay, and we will pass it 2000. And if we were to print the balance, okay, it will print the initial balance. I have my account, so you would call the balance, okay, and this is the instance field, yeah, which is here. It says, okay, print me on the screen the balance of this account, and it will give you a balance, okay. And then this object, if we take this object and we call the deposit method on it, but we know that the deposit method must be given a some sort of a number here, because this is how it was declared. Okay, it was declared to take some sort of a argument. Okay, and whatever we pass it here should be added to our balance. And then if we were to print again my account dot balance, yeah, it will give us the updated amount. The first code prints 2000, okay, because that is the initial value of my account dot balance, and then it prints 2100, which is the value of my account dot balance after the deposit method has run. Changing instance fields is how we change the state of an object and make our object more flexible and realistic. Okay, if we have a look at the instructions, it says we have added a price instance field to the store class. Okay, so they've added this one. However, to combat inflation cost, we've found ourselves increasing the price of our product over and over. We've added an empty increase price method to the store class. It takes a double parameter, price to add, okay? So they're talking about this method here on line 13. So it says increase price. This is a method that takes some sort of a value here, type double, as a parameter, okay? It says inside of the increase price method, create a variable called new price, okay? Declare it to be a double. So we're going to declare it to be a double, and the name is new price. And set it equal to the price plus the price to add. Price plus the price to add. Okay. Let's run this. So instruction number 1 is done. Instruction number 2 says inside of the increase price method, set the instance field price to be the new price, okay? So inside the increase price, we want to set the instance field price, which is this one, okay? Make it equal to the new price, okay? Make it be the new price, okay? We're gonna run this. And then if we have a look at the instruction number 3, it says in the main method, increase the price at the lemonade stand by 1.5. Then print the lemonade stand dot price to see how it has changed. So let's read this once more. In the main method, increase the price at the lemonade stand by 1.5, okay? In the main method, increase the price at the lemonade stand by 1.5. Okay, we'll say lemonade stand. So we take this object, okay, and we say increase price, okay? That's how we access its method, by using the dot notation. And we know that in parentheses, we have to add this new value. We have to give it something, because this is how it was defined, okay? Initially, it was defined as the method increase price that takes some sort of a double, okay? And this is how we have to call it, by giving it a double that it needs, okay? Then print the lemonade price stand. Let's do then sysout. Oops. We have to sysout this. So system.out.println lemonade stand.price. Okay, we're gonna run it now, and it's gonna give us 525. Okay, and we can go on to the next lesson. Okay, returns. So we're gonna talk about returns. Remember, variables can only exist in the scope that they were declared in. We can use a value outside of the method it was created in if we return it from the method, okay? So we return a value by using the keyword return. Public int number of tires. Okay, so we have a method, okay, but this time you can see we don't have the void keyword anymore. We have instead int, which means that whenever we run this method, it's gonna give us back something. That something should be of type int, whatever ends up being, okay? And if it returns us something, it means that whatever it gives us back, whatever result it returns to us, we can use it further in our program. We can either assign it to a variable, we can either add it to something, use it one way or another, depending on the logic that we want to implement in our program. This method called number of tires returns 4. In the past exercises, when creating new methods, we use the keyword void. Here we're replacing void with int to signify that the return type is an int. The void keyword, which means completely empty, indicates to the method that no value is returned after calling that method. Now, in return, so alternatively, we can use data type keywords such as int, char, etc. to specify that the method should return a value of that type. Okay. So for example here, if we have public static void main, okay, we've seen of course the main method before. We're creating an object and then we say num of the tires, okay. For example, let's have a look here on this other side, okay. On the myCar object, we are calling number of tires, okay. And if we have a look at number of tires, it says whenever you call number of tires, return something of type int. In our case, that something is going to be value 4, okay? Because it says int tires equals 4, return tires. What is tires? Well, tires is the value 4, okay? So if here on this myCar object, we call this method, we know that this is going to evaluate to 4, okay? Now that 4 gets stored into num tires, okay? Which of course is of type int because they have to match, okay? Within main, we call the number of tires method on myCar, okay? On myCar object, we call this method number of tires. Since the method returns an int value of 4, so since this method, because it was called on this object, this altogether returns the value of 4, we store the value 4 in an integer variable called num tires. If we printed num tires, we would see 4. So if now on the next line we were to say system.out.println num tires, we would get number 4, okay, printed. Now if we have a look at the instructions, it says we want to have a method that returns the price plus tax. Define a method called getPriceWithTax that is intended to return the price plus the tax. It should take in no parameters and return a double. Okay, you can leave the body of the method empty for now. And there's a note: the code will have an error until we return the correct type from the method, which we will do in the next step. So I guess what it's trying to say is that whenever we're going to run this, well, whenever we create the code that is requiring us to create and we run it, we press run, we're going to still have an error, but we will correct it in the instruction number 2, okay? So let's have a quick look again. Define a method called getPriceWithTax, okay? That is intended to return the price plus the tax, okay? So we're going to go here. They left us a little bit of a comment, which is quite helpful. Okay. But before this, I have to make this public. And return a double. So we're going to make it a double. Okay. So public double get price with tax. Okay. And it should take in no parameters. So therefore, these parentheses, they're going to stay empty. And return a double. Okay, we're gonna leave the body empty, and the body, remember, is the contents of this method. And of course, because we say, well, this method is gonna return something, but yet its body, it's empty, of course it's understandable that we're gonna get an error, okay, here whenever we run this. And I'm gonna do this now. And it says on line 21, which is essentially the end of the getPriceWithTax method, which says it should return a double. it says is missing a return statement. So it doesn't have any return we don't have any return from this because the body is empty. We haven't put anything, okay, in there to return. If we have a look at the instruction number 2, it says inside the get price with tax method, create a double variable, total price, okay. So this is gonna be of type double, total price, and we're gonna set this equal to the price plus that, okay. So the price plus price times 0.08, okay. This is the rate at which they've decided to calculate the tax. It could have been anything really, but this is just for example, the sake of the example. Then return total price, and how we return that, we say return total price. So the one thing we need to understand here is that if a method is returning something, be it a double, a boolean, whatever it might be, automatically it should have a return something here, okay? And total price, because it's a double and we say, okay, return total price, the type of whatever we return should be exactly the same type of how we declared our method here in its method signature, okay? So if I'm gonna run this now, there you go, we're not getting any more errors. Instruction number 2 was completed, and we go on to instruction number 3, and it says inside of main, set a double variable, lemonade price. So inside the main, we go here and say double lemonade price, and we set this one to the value returned by calling the get price with tax, so calling this method on our newly created object, okay? So I'm gonna take that object, I'm gonna call it using the dot notation, this method on it, okay? There you go. I'm gonna end it with a semicolon. So it says inside the main, we are in the main, set a double variable lemonade price, so a double variable called lemonade price, and set that equal to the value returned by lemonade stand dot get price with tax. Okay, I'm gonna run this now, and we've done it. Now print out lemonade price. We're gonna use the system.out.println. Oopsie. End it with a semicolon, and whatever we're gonna give it to print is gonna be the price. Okay, I'm gonna run this now, and we should get 4.05. Okay, we are gonna move on to the next lesson, the Tostring method. Okay, when we print out objects, we often see a string that is not very helpful in determining what the object represents. In the last lesson, we saw that when we printed our store object, we would see some output like this. So I hope you remember this, because we've seen it in the previous lessons, probably 2 lessons ago or 1 lesson ago, okay? Where the store is the name of the object, yeah? And this other thing is the position, is the location in memory, okay, of that object. This doesn't tell us anything, or it's not really helpful to see this. It doesn't tell us really anything. This doesn't tell us anything about what the store sells, the price, or the other instance fields we've defined. We can add a method to our classes that makes this printout more descriptive. When we define a Tostring method for a class, we can return a string that will print when we print the object, okay? So in this case, we have a class called car. We have a string, an instance variable called color of type string. We have its constructor, and the constructor takes a parameter of type string called car color, and whatever value we give it here is going to be assigned to the instance variable called color. Then we have our main method, which we've seen quite a few times now, which should be quite familiar with it. And on this line, we're creating an object, okay, of type class. We're creating an instance of our car class. And then here we print this object. Whenever we would print this object, had we not defined this, so ignore this for now, we would see something like we've seen here, okay? And if we want to make it a bit more descriptive, this, whenever we are trying to print our object, okay, we can create a toString method, okay? So this is a regular method, okay, that returns a string, and we're gonna say return this. It gives us some information. When this runs, the command system.out.println myCar will print this is a red car, as opposed to, which tells us about the object myCar, as opposed to seeing something like gibberish, almost gibberish like this, okay? Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it says in the main method, print the objects lemonade stand and cookie shop. So in the main method, print the objects lemonade stand and cookie shop, okay? So we have a lemonade stand and a cookie shop. And both of these are objects or instances of our car or of our store class, okay? And it tells us to print them. System.out.println, and we're gonna print these objects, okay? So one is that, and I'm gonna copy, and we're gonna print the cookie shop as well, okay? Are these printouts helpful in understanding these objects? Well, let's print them out. Let's run the project, our program, our little project. And we see this one outputs this, and this other one outputs this one. They're not, we can't really understand anything. Well, or if anything, we are understanding very little, okay? So it says then the instruction number 2, it says create a toString method for the store class. The method signature should say that it is public, okay? So let's go and do this already. So create a toString method, okay, for the store class. The method signature should say that it is public, okay? So the method signature is something like this, okay? We've seen it before, and probably in this lesson, if I remember correctly, we talked about this. Okay, so where should we put it? Well, let's put it just here, okay? Let's say toString, and we're gonna say it's public because it says here it should be public, okay? Public. It should return a string, okay? And then the name of our method is that, okay? And it should return, it should return this one, okay? This is according to the instruction. So it says create a toString method for the store class. The method signature should say that it is public and that it returns a string. It shouldn't take in any parameters, so no parameters there. For now, have it return the string store, okay? Which we've just done, okay? Now, since I've pressed run, whenever we're trying to print these objects here, okay, is going to print store, and now it comes from here, okay? Because whenever we're trying to print something on the screen, it runs the toString method, okay? And now for our objects, okay, we have declared a proper toString method as our instructions told us to do. Now it says store isn't very helpful. What kind of store is it? Change the toString method, so our method, change it in such way so it does return a string that describes this store object. So our string should look like this store sells product type. So this store sells product type. Okay, so it should be a little bit like this, okay? And we're gonna walk through this code in a bit. Product type, where product type and price are the values in those instance fields. So for example, if it was a hat store where hats cost £8, let's say, the string would say this store sells hats at a price of 8, okay? So we have to replace this by using, if you remember, concatenation, okay? At the price of price, okay? There you go. I'm gonna try and resize these windows. Okay, so this store sells product type, okay? Let's place a space here so it's gonna look nice and properly written, okay? At a price of price. So this is gonna be, whenever it's gonna be printed on the screen, this value is not gonna be product type per se, but instead is gonna have the value that is stored in this variable, okay? And this value here is going to be replaced by the actual value stored in the price variable, okay? Now, if we're going to run this, we have a problem. Okay, so this store sells at a price of price. Okay, so on line 14, so the problem is somewhere here. Return this store sells plus... Oh, we're missing a plus here because I haven't concatenated it properly, okay? So in order for it to be concatenated properly, we know that we have to have a plus sign, okay? Which, if it is applied between a string and something else, is going to turn into a string, but I was missing completely the plus sign here. So I'm going to try and run it again. And there you go. We now have a okay, let's see. So this store sells lemonade at a price of $3.75. This store sells cookies at a price of 5. I don't know why I'm getting this one. We tested getting the toString method for a lemonade store with a price of 1, and we got the wrong string. Expected, I'm not quite sure what that is, so I'm gonna run it again. Okay. We tested getting the toString for a lemonade store with a price of 1, and we got the wrong string. Expected price of price. Okay, so I just looked into it a bit more, and what I was missing this damn dot here. So it was just a dot that tripped us up. Essentially, if you have a look here, the output is supposed to have a dot at the very end. Whereas before I was missing this dot, okay? So it would simply show this store sells lemonade at a price of $3.75, no dot, okay? And this one the same. So that was the one that was tripping us up. So not a problem anymore. Look at the printouts. Again, are they more helpful now? Yes, of course they are more helpful now. Okay, and this way we finished also lesson 8 out of 9. We're gonna move on. Okay, so this is the review one, the review lesson. It says, we've done great work so far. Methods are a powerful way to abstract tasks away and make them repeatable. They allow us to define behavior for classes so that the objects we create can do the things we expect them to. Let's review everything we have learned about methods so far. So defining a method. Methods have signature that declares the return type, the name, the parameters, okay? Whatever parameters they might take. Calling a method. Methods are invoked with a dot, so there's the dot notation and the bracket, the parentheses, okay? Parameters are inputs to the method and their types are declared in parentheses in the method signature, okay? So like we've seen here, for example, we have some parameters that are passed to this method, okay? Well, this happens to be a constructor, but it's the same thing. So we have the name of the method, and then in brackets we have some sort of a variable. In the end, this is a variable, okay, of type int, and we have the name as well. Then changing instance fields. So methods can be used to change the value of an instance field. The scope. Variables only exist within the domain that they are created in. Then it talks about return. The type of the variables that are output are declared in the method signature, okay? As you move through more Java material, it will be helpful to frame the tasks you create in terms of methods. This will help you think about what inputs you might need and what outputs you expect, If we have a look at the instructions, it goes like this. Now we've learned about behavior. We can apply behavior to our savings account. Class using methods. We've added the functionality for each method inside the main now, but you will be rebuilding each above main, okay? So each above main. Note that your methods can directly access the balance field. So first, write a method called checkBalance that prints, hello, your balance is... Okay, so we have to write a method that is called checkBalance, okay? And we're gonna make it public, void. We're gonna call it checkBalance, and we're gonna add the squiggly braces here. Okay, and we're gonna do some indentation. I've placed my mouse cursor at the beginning of the line, and I've pressed the tab key on my keyboard, okay, to just indent them a little bit. So indentation is really helpful when you're trying to read a bit better the code. It should take no parameters and return nothing. So it takes no parameters, it returns nothing because it's void. Let's run this. Woohoo! Okay, so savings account, illegal start of expression, public, void, check balance. But why would this be illegal? I don't understand. Let's have a look together. So Okay, I've tried to do some changes, but actually I've just realized that, so this was my initial code. I've just realized that I'm trying to create this check balance method inside my main, which is completely wrong. So that is my mistake, but then again, we are learning from our mistakes. Okay, so this check balance method, of course, we're supposed to create it inside a class, not inside the main method, okay? So we're supposed to be adding it here. It's going to be public void because it doesn't return anything. Check balance, okay? And it should print out something like this. I'm just going to copy rather than typing. And then I'm going to copy once more. And your balance is, okay? We're gonna stick to exactly what our instructions tell us to do. Okay, if I'm gonna run this now, there you go. There's no more issues, or are there? Does your there you go. I think it's missing a the space there. That's why I got this error. Let's see, plus balance. There you go. Okay, so we wanted here on line 11, if we have a look at the instruction number 1, it says this method should print hello, which it does, and then it should print your balance is, okay, which is exactly what I've done, but it doesn't say plus balance, okay, so it was a bit confusing, but hey. Okay, with the balance, oh, there you go. So with the balance of the account displayed, that's the thing. I should be reading the whole instruction and then maybe read it once more if I need to just split it into smaller bits. But anyways, moving on to the second instruction, it says now write a method called deposit that takes in an int parameter, amount to deposit, and adds it to the balance. It should return nothing, okay? So right underneath our initial our previous method, we're gonna create another one, another method, public. It should return nothing, therefore it's void, okay? Public void. The name of the method is gonna be deposit, okay? But it's gonna take a parameter of type int, and that name of the parameter is gonna be amount to deposit, and we should that it takes an int parameter and adds it to the balance, okay? So it says balance, we can see balance equals to balance plus whatever this amount is, okay? And we have to return or I could have done simply put this keyword, yeah, put it here and delete this one, okay? So return balance equals to balance plus amount to deposit. But for simplicity reasons, I'm simply gonna leave it like this, okay? If you want, you can also have the method print, you just deposited so and so. Okay, so let's do that. Why not? Let's copy the system.out.println. You just deposited. And this, because it's going to be a string, is going to be like so, plus amount to deposit, okay? Like so. So amount to deposit is going to be this one, okay? So after it does its execution here, so to the balance, so to our initial balance here, add this amount to deposit. So you do balance plus amount to deposit, and whatever these come up to be, make it as the new balance, okay, as the current balance. And then whatever that amount is, wait, it should not return anything because it's void. So therefore we have to delete that, okay? It's void, so no return, okay? If it's void, then it doesn't return anything. And then if you want, you can also have the print, you can also have the method print this one, okay? So you just deposited, I'm gonna run this. All right, so this worked. We're gonna move on to the instruction number 3. It says, now write a method withdraw, okay? And that method takes in an int parameter amount to withdraw, okay? So after, right below this deposit method, we're gonna do public void. So it says write a method called withdraw that takes in an int parameter amount to withdraw and subtracts it from the balance. It should return the amount to withdraw. So this one is not therefore void because it's gonna return the amount to withdraw, okay? So public int withdraw, okay? And the code inside is it takes in an int parameter, okay? So this one takes in an int parameter, amount to withdraw, okay? And that amount should be subtracted from our balance, okay? So we say balance equals to balance minus amount to withdraw, okay? If you want, you can also have the method print okay, wait a second. So, and it's subtracted from the balance. It should return the amount to withdraw. Then return amount to withdraw, okay? This is what it tells us, okay? So you modify the balance, but you also have to return the amount to withdraw, okay? And then we can print out, you just withdrew amount to withdraw. So we're going to use concatenation again. Amount to withdraw. Okay, I'm going to run this as well. Okay, we have a bit of an issue somewhere. Okay, savings account, error, unreachable statement, on line 22. Okay, so on line 22, it says write a method called withdraw, okay, that takes in an int parameter. So this method takes in an int parameter and it gives us the name amount to withdraw and subtract it from the balance. So we have the balance equals to balance minus amount to withdraw. It should return amount to withdraw. If you want, you can also have the method print this with a value of amount to withdraw. I believe, so maybe it should be the other way around, because actually whenever we return something, okay, whenever a method reaches a line where it says return, that's where the actual method terminates, even though there might be some code after it, okay? I'm gonna try and run this now, and there you go. We don't have any more errors. So the change to that, what I've done is instead of putting return here, okay, on this line, I've put it to be the last one, because the return statement, so the return line, should be the very last one. Otherwise, if a method still has code after the return statement here, is not going to reach it, okay? Now if we have a look at instruction number 4, test our methods by trying to replace some of the code in the main method with the equivalent methods. make sure to use check balance, deposit, and withdraw. Okay, so let's see. What does it want? Test out your methods by trying to replace some of the code in the main method with the equivalent methods. Okay, so to check balance, we're gonna do savings dot check balance. Okay, and let's delete these ones. Okay, let's do withdraw. To withdraw, we're gonna use the object we just created. We're gonna use the dot notation, and we're gonna use the withdraw method we have here, and we're gonna pass it. What should we pass it? 500. Okay, or I don't know, maybe that's a bit too much. Let's say 15 rather. Okay, let's then do check balance as well. So we're gonna use our object that we just created, savings dot, what was it, check balance. Okay, we're gonna do a deposit. Again, we're gonna use our object that we just created, and the name of our object is savings. Okay, and we're gonna make a deposit of, say, where is it, deposit, we're gonna use and make a deposit of 200. Okay, and then we're gonna check the balance again. We're gonna make another deposit of 500, and then we're gonna check the balance once more. Check the balance. So rather than creating some sort of a little program like this one with system.out.println, we've just created methods, and our code, look at it, is much cleaner now, is much nicer. Okay. Okay, so there's an error. This is not a statement. Check balance. Well, of course it's not, because it's missing the parentheses. Okay, so if I'm gonna try and run it now, there you go, we're getting no errors, and I'm really glad that we run into these small challenges along the way, and we overcame them together. And this means whenever we hit roadblocks, and if we do move past them by solving them, that is growth, that is learning. So I'm actually really pleased that we got to finish this lesson as well, and we've done 9 out of 9, which is brilliant. Great, we will carry on.